right, our final speaker of the day is Bobby Hulme-Lippert. Bobby's a leadership coach, keynote speaker, and creative writer. He has served 2 decades in professional ministry, pastoring diverse congregations in Atlanta, Georgia, Richmond, Virginia, and Georgetown, Texas, and serving in the U.S. Army chaplaincy. Let's welcome Bobby to the stage.
Thank you so much. It is so good to be with you all today. I have been able to meet a few of you already. I was next to a John in the elevator. We were both on our way 2 hours ago to the 22nd floor, where it turns out we're next door neighbors. And John didn't know who I was, or I'd be on this stage in a couple hours. And he looks at me in the elevator and goes, "Boy, I'll tell you, sure feels like an afternoon for a nap." I was like, "I get you, John. I get you." Y'all have had a long day, a full day, a great day. I've been getting some great feedback about how things have been going. And I'm excited to be with you. And I'm excited to explore what I think is actually a foundational topic in all facets of how you and I and all of us are showing up in life. And namely, that is, who are you at your highest and best? And I'm going to give some texture to that in a few moments. But to get there, to get into it, I want to start with a story. A number of years ago, I was set to co-officiate a very large, very formal, very nice wedding, a little north of Boston, Massachusetts. About an hour before the wedding, I open my suitcase and I discover I have my sport coat, dress shirt, tie, dress shoes. I had forgotten my dress slacks. All I had by way of pants for this particular wedding were the light wash jeans I was wearing at that moment. And like I said, very nice wedding. My immediate instinct, which I acted upon, was to race out of the hotel room down to the lobby area, because I knew most of the folks at this particular hotel were there for the wedding. That's where the wedding was taking place. And I start sizing up the guys. Because at this point, an hour before the wedding, I am desperate enough to say, "Look, can I borrow your suit? Just for the service. You can have it back afterwards. I am a co-officiant." Nobody that looks about my suit size. I run back to the room where my wife has opened the laptop and discovered that, yes, we're not really near much commercial retail options. But about 8 miles down the road, there's a Kohl's. Kohl's has suits. I race straight out of my room, down to our rental car, and you know those beautiful backwood New England highways? They kind of wind among the trees. I am just taking this highway at untold speeds to get to that Kohl's, and as I'm going, I get Kohl's on the line. I say, "Look, I need a suit. We sell suits." I said, "Actually, here's the deal. Can you go ahead and just pick out a suit for me? Here's my size. And actually, can you have it in the dressing room so that when I get there, I can go straight there, change, and leave your store with the suit on?" I could tell this woman has never fielded a call quite like this. I'm like, "I'm serious. I am going to be there in 10 minutes. She promises she'll have the suit." I get in, I park at the Kohl's, I race into the changing room area. The suit is there. She has picked out one of those mafia pinstripe numbers that would not have been my first or any choice. But there is no time to debate style. 2 minutes, I've got that mafia pinstripe suit on. The clothes I came in, I crumple under my arm. I throw open the door to the changing room, and I race to the one register that is open, where, of course, there is a decent-sized line. Fortunately, some of the people there saw the literal beads of sweat forming on my head. I'm sure the general panic on my face. And 2 of them said, "Would you like to go to the front of the line?" I said, "Yes. You have no idea. I'm supposed to co-officiate a wedding at the top of the hour." And they're all just like, I get to the front. I still have the plastic security sensors on. I have to jump up onto the register and flip my tail back to the clerk. They take the plastic one off there. I jump down. I then do a hamstring stretch with my left leg onto the register. They take the one off the pants. I pay, out to the car, And again, those beautiful backwood New England highways. Only this time it's more, I am just zipping. I get to the wedding, or to the parking lot. I get out. I start running towards where the ceremony is going to take place in the hotel venue. And I arrive absolutely breathless, sweat pouring down my forehead. New mafia suit. 5 whole minutes before the wedding began. And the couple was happily married. It is amazing what we can do when we have to. It is amazing, the hustle, the hamstring stretch, the whatever it takes when we have. Have you ever known this kind of moment where you have got this thing you have got to do and you have this much time? I see some head nods. What I'm coming to realize is that for most folks these days, this is not a 1 or 2 or few time kind of thing. This is our continual reality. A lot of us, we live most of our days, our weeks, our months, our years, our decades even, on the highway of life, absolutely racing back and forth, covering down, making this happen, getting the suit, getting the thing, stopping the other thing. I sometimes call all of this movement the highway of how. Our lives, it seems, are often a living response to all the how questions that we carry with us. How are we going to cover down on this? How are we going to get this to happen? How are we going to incorporate AI? How are we going to keep up with the change? How are we going to drive new growth? How? The highway of how. In my coaching, I work with individuals and leaders from a variety of sectors, and I will often ask them at the outset of our time together, what is your experience of leadership right now? And I get a wide variety of responses, but some of the more common have included, I get this one, a little bit like it, I get this one. In both cases, there's a sense of we are moving even pretty fast. It's not always clear if we're going anywhere. I sometimes get the juggling image. I get the stretched thin in a dozen different places and ways image. I get the putting out lots of fires image. One time last year, a guy talked about he felt he and his organization, the best description for that moment, that season, it felt like a tiger was chasing them, like there was this bad thing that was going to get them unless they kept running faster, moving, pivoting, finding more efficiencies, or they were going to go down. Now you may or may not relate to any of those images. But I wondered, does it sure feel like a lot of things move fast these days? The pace of this world, the pace of change, the pace of technology, the pace of the competition, the pace to keep up, and oh, by the way, our own pace. And as more and more of the folks I'm working with have been recognizing that this just seems there does not actually seem to be an end or an efficiency or a gear that you hit where you're finally okay, they're asking, is there another way? And a big reason I'm here today is to say, yes. There's actually another way to grow, to have a profound impact, to have even greater growth than the back and forth hustle kind of energy. And the place I want to invite you to help discover what that looks like, or really I should say rediscover what that looks like, is to the one spot I completely did not notice, overlooked entirely, while all I was focused on was getting the suit, getting to Kohl's, getting to the wedding on time. Do you know the one thing I missed the entire time I was just racing on that highway? The trees. The trees, which move at the opposite pace of busy, and yet they sure know something about what it takes to grow something of enduring strength, beauty, nourishment, hospitality. The trees do not have an ounce of hustle in their bone, and yet they sure know something about what it takes to literally change the landscape around them for good, for generations. It is difficult for me to think of a more timely wisdom for a society that is constantly overwhelmed and speeding up than that of whatever the trees know about a different kind of growth. And so for the minutes I have remaining with you, that's my invitation. What if you parked your car on the side of the highway, turned off the engine, threw the phone in the glove box, and what if we just walk into the trees for a moment? And there are a lot of things that we might notice about what a growing, thriving tree looks like and what we appreciate and all the rest. I simply want to note this for the time that I have with you. You ever notice that a really great tree always has a really strong root system? The roots run deep. The magic happens in the health of the roots. What's it look like to root down for each of you today? I was working with an executive last year, about this time, early 50s, very talented, full of all kinds of incredible gifts, but also just dealing with this, what she called the swirl of stress, especially in her workplace, other parts of her life, and she's just unpacking all of this with me. And somewhere in that first session together, she talked about how years ago she used to love to paint. Found a lot of meaning in it, enjoyed it, and hopefully one day, maybe retirement, she'll pick it up again. Well, near the end of our session together, I said, well, would you like to pick up any of those paints a little sooner than someday? She said she would. So she did, and the next week she comes back to our next session, and she has painted her personal values. Not like she's painted the words. She has created an abstract depiction of those values with different colors and shapes and ways to intersect that give voice to who she is uniquely and at her best and how she wants to show up in the world. It was amazing. We start to tease out what that means for how she shows up in the workplace and otherwise. 2 weeks later, she shows up to our time together, and she says at the very beginning, last weekend I spent most of it taking my old art studio out of the back of my house. I never go there, I never even look at it, and I moved it to the center of my living room. And I said, you mean the space that when people walk through your door is the first thing they see, the space where you spend a lot of hours of your week? You mean you moved your art studio into your living room? And she said, yeah. I know it's a little different, but I kind of like it. I'm realizing my creativity is not like a bonus, a side thing, a little hobby, a one-day thing. It's actually fundamental to who I am at my best. And she was discovering that's who she is. She loves creative problem solving, creative bringing together art, but also creativity in the workplace. She was discovering what it is to nourish her roots of who she is at her best, at her creative best. And she started literally painting the landscape of her workplace so very differently. Not by starting with, how am I going to deal with all these problems and challenges in my workplace? They're so hard, so much. But coming back to who am I at my highest and best? What does it look like for you to move your art studio into the center of your living room? All of you have specific, unique gifts, unique strengths, things that you actually love to do, you're quite good at. Serve others incredibly well when you do them. What's it look like to center that one or two thing in your lives? What's it look like to make that your priority? What's that look like to give the best hours of your day to that? It's a different kind of energy, a different kind of possibility to start with who you are at your highest and best. And actually, it's far more powerful and generative, and this has been studied. Some of you recognize this book, 10X is Easier Than 2X, Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And they say, a lot of us, when we want to grow and make change in our business, our financial situation, our lives, we try to kind of 2X it. We kind of tweak all these things on the highway of how. How am I going to do this a little better? How am I going to do this and this and this and how and how and how? And if I do all these things a little bit better, gosh, maybe I'll 2 times better than where I was. Amazing. They say, no. The real magic for 10X kind of growth in any facet of life or business, the real magic is when people risk centering what they call your unique ability. The place you're most confident, energized, and valuable. Their way of saying, stop with all the how questions. How are we going to figure it out? How are we going to deal with it? How are we going to do how? Drop the how. Start with who. Who are you at your most excellent, confident, valuable? And let all the answers and growth and action emerge from that centering. Their research actually shows that the real change happens when people risk nourishing their unique ability, honoring it, using it with 80% of their time. You can imagine the things that you have to let go and stop doing in order to say this is a different kind of growth, a different kind of possibility. This is what it looks like to start with who. This is moving the art studio to the center of the living room. Bronnie Ware. Does anyone recognize the name Bronnie Ware? She was a palliative care nurse for a number of years. And so she sat with people as they were dying, and they were sharing about their lives, the things they loved, the things they regretted too. And so she would hear all these stories, and she eventually wrote a book about what she heard so that she could teach different lessons of insight and wisdom to the folks with years remaining on earth. And her book ended up being a bestseller 15 years ago. She wrote about the top 5 regrets that people have on their deathbed. I wonder if anyone remembers what the very first one, what the number 1 regret was that was voiced to her time and again. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to who I am, not the one others expected of me. Oh, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to who I am, not the one others expected of me. Which is to say, not only do I regret that I got caught up on that highway of how, trying to cover down on all the things that people wanted and needed and expected, and all the things I was trying to do good things, and yes, but I regret that I also didn't just stop and have the courage to step entirely off the highway and ground down more fully, deeply, into my singular space of joy, of giftedness, of vitality. Oh, how I wish I'd had the courage to do that. What does it look like for you to move the art studio to the center of the living room? Who are you at your highest and best, as an individual, as a people? Some of you, I imagine, are saying, I have no idea what to do with this question. This is a little different to step off the highway and consider what my unique ability is and ground into a different kind of way of seeing the world and approaching all the things I'm dealing with. If that's you, let me offer this. Have you ever noticed that really great trees, the ones that grow with such strength and beauty and might and all the rest, they don't just have a strong root system themselves. The root systems are mutually nourishing. No? One of the best ways to discover what your unique ability is for this season of life, because you know that it evolves. Different seasons of life, we emerge differently. Best way to discover it, if it's unclear for you, what's another tree or two in your area? A person or two you trust, you respect, you appreciate? And what if you ask them? You know, when we're inside the bottle that is our own lives, it's hard to read the label. We need others to see us for who we are and help that name that back to us. Yeah, the best, the strongest trees have mutually nourishing roots. What if you ask someone, hey, I went to this thing this afternoon, the guy talked about losing his wedding pants, and also this thing about who we are at our highest and best. What do you see when I'm at my best? What's it look like? Now, others of you are saying, hey, I know my answer. Actually, I'm being reminded to just jump off the highway for a few moments and reground. And I'm already plotting out what this means for my calendar tomorrow and next week and this quarter. I see implications for some of what I need to say yes to, and by the way, some of what I need to say no to. I know who I am, and I'm glad to be reminded. Here we go. And if that's you, and you're feeling it, and you're like, come on, yeah, okay. Who are the trees in your area? The people you work alongside with, your family, your neighbors, colleagues, people you lead, people you appreciate. And what if your role is not necessarily to ask them to tell you anything but you? You take it upon yourself to be that voice to say, I just want to take a moment to remind you who you are at your highest and best. I mean, think about some of the mentors, leaders, bosses, coaches, parents, family members who have been most instrumental in your formation over the years. I bet they not only believed in what you were doing, but at a fundamental level, who you are. And they found ways to remind you who you are. You see, there are dozens of ways that you all can help one another in this crazy world of highways and trying to make things easier and better and all that way. You know, one of the most fundamental and empowering ways you can change a life is to be one of those rare voices that calls people off the highway for a moment, just says, hold up. I know it. You're doing so much. You're doing awesome. It's a lot. Here's who you are at your highest, at your best. Let me just tell you a story of a way I recently saw you at your best. Oh, that is a sacred gift. When a leader, when a mentor, when a family member sees another for who they are. Some of you have someone on your mind even this day, and what if it's not an accident? Because maybe in the next day or two, you get to nourish those roots. The strongest trees, they have deep roots, mutually nourishing root systems. You know, a couple weeks after that wedding, a little north of Boston, we pulled off the suit. I was back home in Richmond, Virginia, where we lived at the time, and I drove over to our local Kohl's, where I should have handed them a thank you note, or perhaps bought a lot of merchandise as an abundant thank you to all of the ways they saved me. Instead, I returned the mafia suit, which I felt pretty bad about like right away, and still do, because honestly, Kohl's did me a solid. And it would be way more fun if I could tell this story with you all today and like be wearing the suit or at least have it with me or something. But then there's another part of me that thinks, you know, this is perfect. A big part of my invitation to you this afternoon is what if you return the suit? What if some of the things, or a lot of the things that have been keeping you going and busy on that highway of how, what if they're just not that important? You returned them, or at least lowered them a notch or two or three down the priority list? What if you followed the simple wisdom that really captures all I've been talking about for the last minutes here of Howard Thurman, 20th century scholar, educator, theologian, and he said, look, when you're trying to think about what to do with your life and how, and this season and this way to impact others best and lead best and be the best you can and whatever facet, don't ask what everyone around you needs, what the world needs. Don't start with like, I'm going to just race down the highway of hell, figuring out all the ways I can be helpful and do whatever's needed. No. Ask what makes you come alive. Start with who? Start with your unique ability. Ground deeply into your unique who. Discern that for this season of life. And go act on that. Let the branches grow from that answer, from those insights. And here's the magic. Because what the world needs are people who have come alive. The world does not need yet busier people, yet more people trying to be miracle makers, covering down on every last thing. What the world needs are trees that have come alive with a different kind of vitality and energy, a people whose lives are a literal breath of fresh air and possibility to the lives around them. Take just a moment and consider the landscapes of your own life, the landscape of your family, your neighborhood, your workplace, your community of faith, the landscape of your state, this nation. What becomes possible when you as individuals and as a people, time and again, risk pulling off of the highway to root down and respond to the question, who am I at my highest and best? Who are we at our highest and best? And personally, I take it as an incredible encouragement, actually, to consider the fact that a faithful response to those questions means that none of us will live long enough on earth to see the full measure of the goodness and abundance that is made known through our lives. Thank you. Quick note about that QR code if you want. If you answer a couple questions just of how this went for you, I love the feedback. It's helpful. You'll also get a brief thing I have, a 4-part piece on leadership from the ground up. It's a resource I often use in my coaching, and it gives some structure to the talk today. And as well, if I have a weekly newsletter, a leadership newsletter, and you're welcome to click in and opt in on that as well. Regardless, I look forward to following up with you all as I will be around the remainder of today. And look forward to meeting you. Thanks.